from Martin Luther King Jr., who reminds us that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. Hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that. We shall hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope.
This is the day.
This is the day that the Lord has made. This is the day. This is the day that the Lord has made.
Let us rejoice.
Let us rejoice.
Let us be glad. This is the day
that the Lord has made.
We call that church free, which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence, which binds together families and generations and stands against all our doubt, which is the joy of worship before the mystery of life and death, which protects and nourishes integrity and spirit, which yearns to belong to the church universal, which seeks to cite from every source and gives rise to new and broader faith, which is a pilgrim church on an adventure of the Spirit, which seeks the prophethood and priesthood of every soul, prompted by a Spirit that bloweth where it listeth and maketh all things new. Yes, it is a new day, each and every one of them made fresh just for you. And this morning we get to welcome someone who is going to be our welcomer, who is new not only to you but to the church. I just got to meet Mr. Ortiz a few minutes ago. He and his wife Paige, am I correct in that, have been recent participants in our church, and he would like very much to share a little of his story and why he's here at Fountain Street Church. Andres, would you take my place up here for a moment or two? Come on up.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Andres Ortiz, as I was told. Actually, it's Andres Ortiz Esteves, and I am from Colombia, South America. And I am from the northeast, a city at the northeast of my country, closer to Venezuela, right by the end of the mountain chain of the Andes. And the weather most likely is about 70s all year long. So I was told, because now my family complains that it's a little bit 80s due to global warming. And it is a great place, but on the other hand, everybody has that little willing to looking for another opportunity somewhere else. That's somehow how I started this journey to come to the States. So I'm an immigrant. I'm a legal immigrant. And just like many other immigrants, I had also the opportunity to come to this country by plane, not like many others, but still with different type of struggles. It is not easy. You have to go through so many loops in order for you to come here. You have to go through different things, financial, psychological. You do go through so many hopes and expectations that sometimes will come through, sometimes they will challenge you. I studied medicine for a few years in Colombia, pursuing a career that I think I can help other people. I decided that after about 5 years, this is not where it's going to take me. This is not something that I can do on my own. And it's not going to keep me in the place that I want to be in the future. So I decided to pursue the American dream, which is coming to the States. And I started to look for universities, and I started volunteering and working in summer camps in the States about 15 years ago. And then I went to Grand Valley State in 2006, and I graduated from psychology and sociology. And then I got a job in Flint working with community mental health, and I've been working with community mental health since. I work currently at community mental health here in Grand Rapids, and I also volunteer, or not volunteer, but work in a way as a volunteer, interpreting for some of the illegal immigrants in some medical appointments here in Grand Rapids. I get to hear many of those stories of those people who work really hard to make a difference in this country. Many of those people, just like me, you don't get to choose where you're born. they choose to come here to make a difference. I'm going to read a very short story that make a difference. One of my coworkers actually shared it for the last day of work, and I thought it was very convenient. It's the starfish story. An old man was walking on the beach on the morning after a storm. In the distance, he could see someone moving like a dancer. As he came closer, he saw that it was a young woman picking up starfish and gently throwing them in the ocean. "Young lady, why are you throwing starfish in the ocean?" "The sun is up and the tide is going out, and if I don't throw them in, they will die," she said. "But young lady, do you not realize that there are many miles of beach and thousands of starfish? You cannot possibly make a difference." The young woman listened politely, then bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw them in the sea. It made a difference for that one. Thank you.
We forget that our hymns are music sometimes. They are not just things to get you up on your feet and stretch after sitting too long. And that is a hymn in our hymn book. And if you enjoyed hearing it, we shall sing it in the future. What I love about the music particularly is that the beginning is an absolute outright theft from Edward Elgar, and I love it. Because those of you who know Nimrod, the Nimrod variation, you can hear it right there, and you go, oh yes, it's a gift unto itself. I'll be talking about gifts today. Then I'm going to talk about some other things. First, I like to have a practice of doing something continually for me and for you. And the two I've made a practice for myself starting in January particularly, is that I will follow the advice of the great Reformed theologian Karl Barth, who said the pastor and the faithful should not deceive themselves into thinking that they are solely a religious society which has only to do with certain themes. They live in the world. We still need the Bible and the newspaper. And so my task is, how can I bring an event from the moment we're living in with the antiquated and antique teachings of Scripture so they talk to each other in a critical way? That means I'm always on the lookout all week long to find the thing that's making me crazy, maybe making you crazy, and why. Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Central Michigan University says a Valentine's Day card that mocked Jews who died in the Holocaust was not created by a student at the school. The woman who created the card apparently knew members of the college Republicans, which unwittingly distributed the Valentine in a gift bag given to other students on Wednesday night. The card said, quote, "My love for you burns like 6,000 Jews," and had a photo of Adolf Hitler, and was signed XOXO. In a statement Friday, Central Michigan said the woman admitted her, quote, "misguided action." The school says members of the Republican Student Club were shocked and remorseful. University President George Ross apologized to the public. He says the journey toward diversity, respect, and peace at times, quote, "seems endless." In the Wisdom According to Sirach, which is an apocryphal book used by Protestants, but not used by Catholics, but not so much by Protestants, but it is part of the sacred body of Scriptures, you find this passage. It's like Proverbs. If you choose, you can keep the commandments and act faithfully. And to act faithfully is a matter of your own choice. God has placed before you fire and water. Stretch out your hand for whichever you choose. Before each person is life and death, and whichever one chooses will be given. The point I derive from this is that we are all in a position to make choices every day. Choices that advance life, choices that bring death. And it seems to me that someone in Central Michigan University made a poor choice. How can we, as individuals, reach for the water and not the fire? And how can we, as a community, teach others to make better choices ourselves? so I'm going to get you to sing a little more. I'll make a reference to this later, but you sit. Don't stand up. The choir and I will play a little music. They'll sing. Then they'll sing a little more. And then you can join them on the refrain every time I feel the Spirit, which is an interesting prayer. And we usually hear it more robustly, but we're going to do it a little gently this time. And I'm going to play the piano, which is more terrifying than singing. So I need your forgiveness. All right. We have to practice forgiveness a lot because we're not very good at it, are we? That's a human trait, of course. So I'm going to try to start this up, and my partner in crime, as it were, Miss Marilyn, will help me here. And the words are in your order of service. If you feel obliged to look at all the words and notes, it's found as number 208, but I'd rather have you listen than look. Did you see the words from Jack Kerouac in your order of service? I like this. Speaking to somebody else, Smith, you don't realize it's a privilege to practice giving presents to others. A privilege. How many of us think of gifts as things we have to get? Oh, I'm going to a birthday party. Gee, I better get a gift. Oh, I've been invited to a baby shower. What? I don't know what to bring. We've been invited to supper. Gee, do they want us to bring wine or flowers? And it feels like a chore, doesn't it? When was the last time the idea of giving a gift felt like fun? You know it was there. It happens. Sometimes it's your child, a beloved, maybe a friend. Whatever it is, there was a moment when you felt like you wanted to give something. And you were excited about the giving. It wasn't a chore. It wasn't an obligation. It was a privilege. You can't give things to everybody, you know. If you walked up to someone and gave them a gift, they'd go, wait a minute. What? Who are you and why are you giving something to me? It presumes a relationship. A relationship that you value. And the privilege that you enjoy in nourishing that relationship. I celebrate my relationship with you, giving a gift. And of course, the only thing harder than giving a gift is getting one. Gee, what do I do now? Do I have to write a note? Do I have to say thank you? Now or later? We're not good at this, are we? And I do this as we enter into a time of prayer and meditation. I want you to ponder the last time you gave a gift because you wanted to. And I want you to ponder the last time you received a gift that delighted you and without feeling obligated, that it was a true gift. Let us spend a moment or two in prayer in that frame of mind. We lift our hearts in thanks today for all the gifts of life, says the words of our hymn. The gifts that we receive each day by taking a breath, each one, it's a gift of its own. A gift of light and dark, of food to eat and of hunger for food, of the health we enjoy and the illness we bear, of the abundance we know and of the privations we know as well. All of these gifts, unsought, unbidden, yet present in our lives. And all the gifts we give without knowing. The smile we didn't have to offer, the greeting that was unexpected, and yes, even the time we didn't greet or didn't smile. A gift we didn't know we gave and was probably unwelcome at the time. Every breath we take is a gift we receive. Every word we speak is a gift we give. How can we endow each of them with the precious, even priceless value they bring? That is why we are here. And that is why we pause in silence, that we may hear their blessing and their burden and resolve to cherish them both as we go through the week. And so we gather our hearts now in silence, which is the most and truest prayer we have to offer. And let us every time and every day say, Amen.
Sing
So I'm of an age when we used to dress up to go to church as a child. Some of you remember that. If you were a boy, you had to put on a scratchy white shirt and a necktie that always felt too tight. And you had to wear shoes that were nearly as comfortable and had to be kept polished. Sometimes you have to put on a little argyle sweater vest. It was awful. We could not wait to get home and change into play clothes. But one thing that was not awful was the little envelope that we got with a quarter in it. It looked a little bit like this, you know. My Sunday school took a collection, and we all had our own little box of envelopes, and Mom and Dad would entrust that envelope to us as we left the house, and I would solemnly keep it ready until the plate passed at our little children's worship. But sometimes we were in the big church, and a tall, forbidding man would pass the plate down the pew, and I would have to add my envelope to all the others. And then the music would change, and the ushers would parade up the aisle and present the plates to the preacher, who solemnly took them and placed them on the altar. Then we would sing Old Hundredth, from all that dwell below the skies, and on and on. And that was about as much liturgy as we Unitarians could stand. The sermon was the thing, you know. It's what adults look forward to, and it's what every child loathed. It was all the other parts, the singing, the offering, the music. That was the fun part for a kid. When the preacher started, we began to nod off. Keep that story in mind as I go further. Liberal religion has three goals, however it appears upon the planet: to liberate minds, to animate souls, and to agitate consciences. In January, I explored the liberating aspect, and in February, I'm considering the animating part. Worship is naturally at the center of that. People come to worship to be inspired, uplifted, consoled, to have their hopes rekindled, all important things. It is so central to the task of religion that when they say people going to church, they don't mean the building, they mean the worship service itself. You never say, I'm going to worship, you say, I'm going to church. Church and worship are almost synonymous. In African American communities, a particularly powerful worship service is sometimes described as people saying, we had some church today. Worship is where we are most present to ourselves as a spiritual community, the thing that defines us to ourselves and to others. Worship is also the most ancient part of religion. The oldest religious texts that exist are those for conducting Hindu worship, the Vedas. Japanese Shinto is nothing but rituals. There's no theology. There are no books. They just do it. At the center of almost all these ancient religions is some sort of sacrifice. And that's the part I want to talk about today, because that's the part that's probably the most troubling for religious liberals like us, and yet I maintain is absolutely essential to our future. I think we find it troubling because it's the least rational of all activities when you think about it. Sacrifice usually connotes, killing some animal and burning it on an altar, or even humans being sacrificed, all to a terrible and capricious God before whom we quake. Believing that there are such forces and that they need to be fed by us it makes no sense, especially in modern times. Even those ancient religions that practiced it don't do it anymore. How could it possibly be of value, of use, of any meaning to rational, scientific people like us who have Darwin in the window over there? Here's where the passage from the Christian lectionary is useful. In today's part of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is telling the people listening, so when you are offering a gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Now back then, the only altar was in Jerusalem. There were no, shall we say, neighborhood temples. You went to the one in Jerusalem. You went there to offer your sacrifices. So Jesus is referring to the ritual sacrifice of animals. And in fact, Luke says that after Jesus was born, Mary and Joseph went to Jerusalem to offer 2 turtle doves, which was required by the law after a childbirth. Now, if ancient sacrifice was to ensure you and God were in a good relationship. What I hear Jesus saying here is that we cannot have that relationship go well if we don't have this relationship going well first, between me and thee, not between me and thee. Jesus is not unique in pointing this out. The prophets all do it. And even in modern Judaism today, as you approach Yom Kippur, you must go make your relationships right with your neighbors before you can ask for forgiveness from God. You must settle accounts with the people on earth before you get on the good side of whoever might be in heaven. So the ritual sacrifice, we all know, is not enough. The prophet Micah put it so beautifully years ago, and most of you know part of it. Shall I come with burnt offerings, with yearling calves? Does God take delight in thousands of rams and rivers of oil? What does God require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? That's the point of the whole thing, even the sacrifices. The point of sacrifice is to solidify, repair, enhance a relationship. The prophets tell us that the gift we should be bringing must be ourselves, and that the actual gift is only a symbol of the deeper gift of our own commitment to a whole and healthy relationship. My son is going to be married here in a month. Unlike his mother and father, he and his beloved are going through all the rituals, starting with the moment he literally got on his knees and gave her an engagement ring, instantly shared by social media with half the world. As someone who officiates at weddings a lot, I have to admit I look on the wedding industry with some cynicism. But I have to admit, when I saw the picture, it was touching. Diluted as it may be by commerce, he spent some real money, and she was truly affected. And it was, in our day, a sacrificial gift. He spent a lot of money. The meaning of sacrifice is that we give something that really does cost us. It isn't trivial. It isn't small potatoes. You're really giving of yourself in a way that is noticeable to you and the other person. In sacrifice, we are giving up something of ourselves and saying that the recipient matters more to us than what we are giving. You are worth more to me than this. We live in divided and divisive times. I think we all know that. Current politics deserves most of the blame, but it has deep roots. Our admiration in America for the rugged individualist has made the united part of the United States often more aspirational than actual. As I listen to people these days, though, be it in person or on social media or on television, it seems that we are more divided than we used to be. Individuality now means more than community. Rights are more important than responsibility, and yet I contend that we need them both. We cannot have one without the other. Individuality without community is just isolation. Rights without responsibilities are mere license. And that is why sacrifice still matters even to us. Whether it's an engagement ring, or putting money aside for your children's college, or putting money in the plate, or simply allowing that your conservative cousin has a valid point in an argument, when we give of ourselves, we are attesting to their value to us. Back in the fall, I quoted John Winthrop, the first governor of the Puritans who founded Boston. He preached then to those rugged pilgrims. They weren't the pilgrims. These were the Boston Puritans. He said then, we must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work, our community as members of the same body. This from the people who gave us the Protestant work ethic. They knew then that community was as important to them as individuality, and they knew the cost if they did not preserve it. What is needed in our times, I think at least, is a sense of national community. Community being a word that contains inside it words like common, union, unity, and the most difficult one of all, communion. We have forgotten what we have in common, and we've forgotten that it is larger than what is different. We forget that we share a land. We forget that we have to bind ourselves in union, as a hymn says. It is not automatic. Now, merely reducing tensions is not the answer. The Quaker scholar Parker Palmer observes that if the end of tension is what you want, fascism is the thing for you. It imposes a unity, but it suppresses individuality. True national community is not unity of thought, but communion of mutual care. It is a shared thing we all have to maintain because we all have to sacrifice in order to create it and sustain it. It is unalienable. We cannot deputize our representatives, our senators, our bureaucrats to do it. We have to be the ones to bind ourselves in union. And now another story about communion. Some years ago, a high school friend of ours from long ago, a deeply devout Lutheran, told of her embarrassment of the time she was playing the organ at communion and she saw her son at the altar rail with purple hair. She was mortified. My marvelously wise wife looked at her and said, "Remember how you started that sentence. What matters was he was at the communion rail." She smiled, my friend did, and nodded, and they embraced as only friends who can tell each other the truth can embrace. Communion is where we meet on common ground, no matter how different we are, with the purple hair, with the spiked hair, whether we're black or white, whether we're Christian or secular. Communion is the place in America where we can all kneel because we have all made that place sacred to us. It is what we have come to share. That ritual, born of that sacrifice, is what is missing in our national society at this moment. In Ignazio Saloni's book, Bread and Wine, the village comes to pay condolences on a family whose son was killed by the fascists of Italy. He gathers the people around them and the table in the household, which is laden with bread and wine that was created in their vineyard and from their mill. And he looks at the bread and he says, "See here, this bread was grown by my son. It was threshed by my son. It took 9 months to make it, like making a child." And he looks at the wine and he holds up the bottle and said, "This wine, he grew these grapes. He crushed them and put them in the bottles. It takes 9 months to make a bottle of wine, and he grew it and made it." The analogy to Christian communion is patent. But the point is, we forget that in the Christian ritual is buried a much more human ritual, that when we eat what we make and what we share what we drink of each other. We sacrifice of each other to feed the other. In the end, every act of worship should be a communion in which we felt we have given something and received something, and that our lives are enriched by it. I think our nation needs something like that. And sadly, all too often, the sacrifice of war has become the means by which we unify ourselves in the communion of sacrifice. But what if it were not dead bodies? What if living bodies could sacrifice some of their individuality for the common good? What if it was as important to us as Americans to give to our country as it was to have the country give back to us in low taxes and small government? That's why I believe, and I have said this before, that what we need is national service. That we owe our country 2 years of our lives, because that's what it takes to make a great country. It could be military, it could be otherwise. Think about this. What if everyone had to give their nation and wanted to give their nation 2 years? What if we all had that experience in common? What if everyone who did that, not could understand that their world was larger than the one they left and that the community they served was larger than the one they knew, would our people not be better citizens? Would our communities not be richer for it if all of us had a stake in making it that way? Not just a financial burden, but an actual personal stake in the nation. Yes, we would be giving a lot. But like all sacrifices, it would make both the giver and the receiver more precious. We endow our nation with value by giving of ourselves, which is more than taxes. It's more than jury duty. The same way that church is more than putting money in the plate or signing a pledge card or even coming to church. Our greatness as a nation is measured by the gifts of our people, not the bombs and the planes, not the dollars in the banks, not the size of our homes, not by anything at all. The greatness that we are told we should seek again comes from the gifts we make of our lives to the larger life that surrounds us and outlives us. Communion, that things that binds us together in common union, comes from what we give, what we sacrifice for the greater good. The word sacrifice, after all, is Latin for to make sacred. We, the people, make America great. We, the people, make America precious. We, the people, make this a great church. We, the people, by our gifts and sacrifices, create the world that we want our children to have. Back in my boyhood church, holding my little envelope, I waited eagerly to add it to the plate because mine went in just like Mom and Dad and the tall older man at the end of the pew. The forbidding usher smiled at me. The money went in the plate like everyone else's. It went up the aisle as the organ got louder. We stood and sang, and I could say in myself, this is my church. I have made it better. Can we say the same for ourselves? Not just today, but every week. And should we not say something like that about our nation? This is my nation. I have made it better by my gift and my sacrifice. Be the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. I end my sermon with a recollection that this place is not ours alone, but those who came before us. I lift up the names of Verna Sanders, Florence Geschwind, Jack White, Audrey Turian, Jim Starr, Dick Burke, and Lars Gilson, who lived in this home and made it our home in years past. May the one who is filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your presence. And for those who have gone to their eternal place of rest, may you who are the source of mercy shelter them beneath of your wings eternally and bind their souls among the living, and that they may be at peace, that we may be at peace with them. And let us every time say, Amen. She says, spend all you have for loveliness. Spend it also for peace and love and justice and liberty. And remember, even one singing hour of peace is worth all that we can have. But let's also remember that it is for us to make it. For if we do not make peace, it will not happen. It will not come upon us as a gift from heaven. We must make the peace. We must make the sacrifice. And when we do, our children will look at us from distant times and say, yea, we were given a goodly gift. Let us make it good for our children as well. Therefore, go in peace, remembering that this day and every day is a day which the Lord has made. And let us always rejoice and be glad in it. And let us say, Amen.